For today's video, we are back on Tier Maker, continuing the NHL draft ranking series. We did the 6 overall picks in the previous video, and in today's video, we're going to be ranking the number 7 overall draft picks since 2000, and then obviously, like I always say, we're going right up to 10, and then finishing off the series with the number 1 overall pick, so we're saving the best for last. And the tiers we're going to be ranking them in is Hall of Fame talent, so as the draft picks get later and later, there's not going to be as many people up there. Superstar, top line contributor, good, disappointing, flat out bust, and too soon to judge. So too soon to judge is basically for all the players that were drafted in, like the last 2 or 3 drafts and haven't really been able to make a name for themselves just yet. So we're going to start off with the 2000 number 7 overall pick, and that is Lars Johnson, and he's a flat out bust. There was a lot of problems with him coming over to the NHL at the time from Europe, and I remember I made a video on him, or not specifically on him, but he was featured in a video, so I did some research on him. He only played 8 total NHL career games, so for a number 7 overall pick, obviously, I think I'm going to have to put him in the flat out bust category. Next up, we have Mike Komisarek, and for the majority of his career, he was basically just like a tough guy, but he did play a decent amount of seasons in the NHL. His final year came in the 2013-14 season, and he had a 19 points career high over the course of his career. So definitely not an offensive player, and basically just a tough guy for his career. So I definitely think I'm going to have to put him in disappointing, but not flat out bust, because he did spend a lot of time actually in the NHL. Next up, we have Joffrey Lupul, and for him, I definitely think I'm going to put him in the good category. He had some fantastic years, specifically with the Toronto Maple Leafs in the 2011-12 season. In 66 games, he had 67 points, so he was actually over a point per game, but then came the injuries, and he was never really able to stay healthy after that. So Joffrey Lupul definitely had a good career, and when he was healthy and on the ice, he was definitely a solid offensive guy. If he was consistently like a 60 plus point guy, I probably would have had him up as a top line contributor, but again, a lot of injuries kind of set him back, and just not being able to ever really replicate that season he had in 2011-12 with the Maple Leafs. And now Ryan Suter, and I actually think I'm going to put Ryan Suter as a superstar caliber defenseman, because I feel like for the majority of his career, he has been regarded as one of the top defensemen in the league, and now that Minnesota isn't the greatest team and they were really never able to do much damage in the playoffs, I don't really think he gets recognition as being like one of the top defenders in the league, but the numbers say he definitely is, and he's definitely had a fantastic career, especially since coming over to Minnesota from Nashville. That is really where he blossomed into a superstar caliber defenseman, in my opinion. He had 2 50-plus point seasons with them on the blue line, and is obviously a guy you can throw out there against the opposing team's top line. So a great career for Ryan Suter, and obviously he's still going strong. So I think for sure, based off just what he's been able to accomplish in terms of regular season success, I think for sure I'm going to put him at the superstar category. And next up, we have Rostislav Olez. Hopefully I'm saying his name correctly, but I think I'm definitely going to put him in the disappointing category. He played 8 NHL seasons, had a 30-point sophomore year, but was never really able to follow that up, and then would go on to play in Europe for the majority of his pro career. So yeah, I think he's definitely in the disappointing category, but not a flat-out bust, because again, he did play at least 8 NHL seasons and put up 30 points on one occasion. And now moving on to Jack Skilly, and for Jack Skilly, I think he's in the same category as these guys, and that would be disappointing. He played for the Hawks, the Panthers, the Blue Jackets, the Avalanche, the Vancouver Canucks, but was never a guy that would put up a big amount of points on any occasion, and he was never really a guy that could play a full 82 games. It seems like every year he played like 30 games, then 40, maybe 50 games here and there, but was never able to actually stay on the ice for a full 82 game schedule. So I guess we weren't really ever able to see what he could do offensively, but for sure I think I'm going to put him in the disappointing category. Moving on to the 2006 draft, now we have Kyle Okposo, and I think I'm definitely going to put him in the good category with Joffrey Lupul, because I feel like Okposo is definitely a player who has been solid and good over the course of his career. You could definitely argue that his stint with the New York Islanders, he was like a top line contributor for them. He had 69 points on one occasion with them. That was a career high. But over the past couple of years with the Buffalo Sabres, ever since he came over and signed that big contract, he's kind of been regarded as just one of the bad contracts in the NHL, and that kind of does suck for him, because he still is a decent player. But I'm definitely going to give him the benefit of the doubt, even, kind of taking into consideration the past couple of years where he hasn't been the greatest. I still think for the majority of his career, at least, he has been a good NHL player. And now we're moving on to Jacob Voracek, and for Voracek, I'm going to put him as a top line contributor for sure, Don't really think he's on the level of guys like Ryan Suter and, up there as a superstar caliber player, but definitely still a very, very good player. His career high was 85 points. That came in the 2017-2018 season with the Philadelphia Flyers, and basically over his entire stint there, he has been a top-line contributor, and him and Claude Giroux have really been the offensive powerhouses leading that team. Maybe not so much over the past couple of years because you have guys like Sean Couturier there now who's blossomed into a great player, but Jacob Voracek, definitely in my opinion at least, a top-line contributor for the majority of his career, and definitely a consistent good player. Next up we have Colin Wilson, and Colin Wilson, this is kind of a tough one. I feel like he definitely is a solid bottom six forward, but I feel like he has been disappointing, especially for a top 10 pick at least. He had a 42-point career high that came in the 2014-15 season, but hasn't really been able to replicate that. He scores over 10 goals usually, brings some sandpaper and grit to your bottom six, but again, from a 7th overall pick, I don't really know if that's what you're looking for exactly, so I definitely feel like he's going to be in the disappointing category, but probably better than all 3 of the other players that have been in the disappointing category so far. And now we're going to be moving on to Nazem Kadri. Nazem Kadri, 100%, I'm going to put him at the good category. I feel like he's never been able to really show off that he probably could be a top-line contributor, and on some teams in the NHL, he probably could, but I feel like he's definitely best suited as a number 2 center, not a number 3 center. That's what he was playing with the Maple Leafs last season. I don't really think he's excelling in that role at all, so I'm happy that he now has a fresh start in Colorado and is the second-line center for them. I believe he scored his first goal with them the other night, so hopefully Nazem Kadri's in for a big year and can get back to that 30 goal scoring center that he was when he was originally the 2nd overall center behind Austin Matthews for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I definitely think Nazem Kadri is a very good NHL player. And now we're moving on to Jeff Skinner. And for Jeff Skinner, I'm going to put him as a top-line contributor. Maybe before this past season that we just saw, he probably would have been down here as good, but he was playing on that Buffalo top line, and he exceeded in that role with Jack Eichel and Sam Reinhart and scored 40 goals. He had a 63-point season on multiple occasions. I definitely think he could be in for more than that if he does, kind of balance out the goals and get a little bit more assists as well, and he definitely could be like a 70-point guy. So for sure, I think Jeff Skinner is a top-line contributor, especially just looking at what he did last season. Next up, we have Mark Scheifele, and for Mark Scheifele, I am going to put him in the superstar category. For the past 3 years, he's either been at or above point per game, and yes, he isn't the most flashy player. He's not going to put up 100-point seasons, but I definitely think like a 90-point season is in the cards for him this season with the Winnipeg Jets, and Mark Scheifele, in my opinion, is one of the best centermen in the entire NHL. He's a fantastic leader, and I definitely think you could say he is a little bit underrated. He's also off to a very hot start this year. I believe he has like 10 points in the first 6 or 7 games for the Winnipeg Jets, so he's definitely off to a good start. And in that playoff run where Winnipeg made it to the conference finals, eventually losing to Vegas, Mark Scheifele was arguably the best player throughout those playoffs, even though his team didn't even make the Stanley Cup final. He was scoring at a ridiculous rate, so he definitely shows up in the playoffs, is always consistent throughout the regular season. In my opinion, Mark Scheifele is a superstar in the NHL. Moving on now to Matt Dumba, I'm going to put him as a top-line contributor, and basically for defensemen, that's like top pairing guy, and I definitely think he is that for this Minnesota Wild team. He had a 50-point year in the 2017-18 season, a really big breakout year for him. Sadly, he wasn't really able to follow that up in the 2018-19 season because he was injured, but when he was healthy during the 2018-19 season, he was tearing it up for a defenseman. He had like 12 goals in 32 games before getting injured. Probably could have been like a 25 goal scorer as a defenseman had he had stayed healthy that full season. I definitely think Matt Dumba is on his way to becoming one of the better offensive defensemen in the NHL. If he can work on his two-way game, he definitely could get up there and like become the top 20, top 25 defenseman in the league, especially now that Ryan Suter is, getting up there in age a little bit. I think Matt Dumba is the perfect guy to take his place as the number 1 on that team in terms of their D-core when Ryan Suter is no longer able to play at a super high level. But Matt Dumba, I think, even right now, is definitely a top-line contributor. Darnell Nurse, now this one is kind of tough. I'm going to put him at good, but I have a feeling at the end of this season he will be up there as a top-line contributor. It was kind of a breakout season for him offensively last year. He had 40-plus points as a defenseman, and so far, through the first 5 games of the season for the Edmonton Oilers, he is a point-per-game player. He has 5 points in 5 games, so he's definitely off to a really good start, following up the fantastic season that he had last year. So Darnell Nurse, I'm going to keep him here for now, but again, by the end of the season, I think he definitely could be up there. And now we're moving on to Hayden Fleury. And Hayden Fleury, yes, you could argue it's been too soon to judge, but there's been a lot of NHL drafts since the 2014 draft, and for Hayden Fleury, I think so far he's been disappointing. But again, he is still, I believe, only 23 years old, and he just really hasn't been able to play a full NHL season just yet. But over the first 6 games of the season for the Carolina Hurricanes, he has been in their lineup, or it's not 6 games, I believe they've only played 5 games, maybe 6, I'm not quite sure. But Hayden Fleury has been in the NHL, and he's been doing okay. Hasn't been putting up numbers, but that's usually not his game. If he can stay in as at least a shutdown guy in the NHL, then maybe he could move up to good. But still, I just think he's been disappointing since being drafted by the Canes. Moving on to Ivan Provorov. Provorov I'm going to put at good just because last year was a really bad season for him. He had a great rookie season, followed that up with an even better sophomore season, but then in his 3rd year, it was definitely a downswing and kind of had a little bit of a decline. So hopefully he can bounce back this year. I believe he's off to a pretty good start with like a goal and 2 assists in their game so far. So Provorov is definitely a guy that I think could be up here as a top line contributor and eventually even like a superstar defenseman. But for right now, especially since we've barely only seen him, a couple games this year, and then just looking back at last season, it wasn't the greatest for him. I think I'm going to put him in the good category for now. Next up, we have Clayton Keller from the Arizona Coyotes. And this one was kind of tough because he's another guy like Provorov, came in, had a fantastic rookie year. I believe Clayton Keller had 65 points, but then followed that up with a pretty bad sophomore season in terms of his standards offensively, or at least the standards that were set for him offensively after his great rookie season. So hopefully Clayton Keller can bounce back, have a really good year, and be like a 60 to 70 point guy, because if he does, I definitely think he'll then be up there as a top line contributor. But just basing it off last season, I didn't like the way he played, and Arizona definitely needs more from him offensively if this Arizona team wants to make it into the playoffs. Even though they have Phil Kessel, they still need Clayton Keller to step up and put up big numbers. So for right now, I'm going to put him at good, but he's definitely a player that if he can get back to that rookie season Keller, he'll definitely be up there as a top line contributor 100%. Moving on now to Lias Andersson, I'm going to put him at too soon to judge. Hasn't really been able to become a full-time NHLer just yet, but this Rangers team is now trying to compete and trying to make the playoffs, so it's probably going to get even tougher for him to make the lineup, but it only has been a couple of years now since he's been drafted, so we can't really judge it off much, and again, I think he's too soon to judge. Quinn Hughes, same thing for him, but Quinn Hughes by the end of this season I definitely think could be up there as even a top line contributor and definitely in the good category, because so far throughout the first couple of games of the season for Vancouver, he has been fantastic. He doesn't look like a rookie out there whatsoever. I have him on my fantasy team, so I'm definitely happy with the way he's been playing, but Quinn Hughes I definitely think it is too soon to judge because we've yet to see a full NHL season. So here's how my rankings look. I think I'm going to go back and revise it, see if I want to change anything, so I'll be right back. I think I like how this looks. I'm not going to change anything up, so I will link this down below in the description so you guys can do it, and then once you're finished, you can take a picture of it and then tweet at me and we can talk about it. And if you disagree with any of my rankings, make sure to let me know down in the comment section below. So that is going to wrap up today's video. I really hope you guys did enjoy. Like I said earlier, I will link it down below in the description so you guys can go make your own ranking list. But thank you guys so much for all the support on the channel lately. I really do appreciate it, and thank you guys for watching today's video. If you did enjoy, make sure to drop a like on it and subscribe to the channel for daily NHL content, and I will see you guys all in the next video.